I am marrying the prince, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. The reward is enough for you to start a new life or marry one of my other sisters. Please, my darling Arinze, this is a huge opportunity for me. After hosting a wrestling tournament where she was humiliated, Princess Adan felt deeply embarrassed as the participants shook their heads and walked away, wanting to avoid her. The villagers watching the tournament also left, whispering about her body odor and holding their noses in disgust as they exited the tournament grounds. Arinze approached her with purpose, his face conveying both concern and sadness for her distress. Adan apologized for all her wrongdoings. Arinze pulled her into a comforting embrace. Nuzzling into his shoulder, Arinze said, "I have forgiven you and I want to be with you. I don't care what people will say. I love you from the rising of the sun to its setting. I don't care about your father's wealth or heritage. All I want is you. Come away with me," Arinze whispered. Adan looked up to see the same joyful drummer from the bush, love and hope shining in his eyes. With delightful laughter, Adan once again smelled only warmth and comfort instead of the disgust from the villagers. No splendid royal ball or fawning attention from kings could replace this feeling of home and belonging with Arinze. She took his hand. Arinze walked Adan home. They both agreed to meet the next day. Arinze left to him village. That night, Princess Adan rested uneasy in her chambers, her mind plagued by distressing thoughts. She kept replaying the utter humiliation she had endured earlier that day at the wrestling tournament. When her severe body odor had suddenly returned, the crowd had turned on Adan viciously. She vividly remembered their cruel taunts, pointing fingers, disgusted scowls, and the way they all shrank away, covering their noses in revulsion. Hot tears spilled down Adan's cheeks as she recalled a rotten tomato striking her shoulder, hurled by some hateful village boy, followed by peals of laughter. Adan felt completely crushed. She had worked so hard to make herself beautiful and desirable, with lovely gowns and jewels in hopes of making a fine match. But it had all been thrown back in her face when her curse of foul-smelling affliction returned without warning. And yet, Adan's weeping softened as she reflected on how her dear Arinze had rushed to embrace her after she fled the chaotic scene. When no one else would come near the putrid odor she emitted, he alone had wrapped her shaking body tight in his arms, whispering comforting words in her ear. Arinze still loved her, in spite of everything. Adan knew she must get to the root of why this curse kept coming back. She resolved to go right away to speak with her father, King Chukwemeka. Surely as monarch, he possessed knowledge of how this plaguing curse befell her so long ago. There must be more she could try to break its cruel hold over her. Adan rose swiftly from her ornate bed and tucked her nightrobe tight around her frame. She lit an oil lamp to light her way through the shadowy corridors and slipped out into the darkness. The night air was warm, filled with chatter of crickets and flutter of moths. Adan followed the stone path briskly to her father's private chambers. Rapping lightly, she called through the carved wooden door. "Father, I apologize for disturbing you so late, but I desperately need answers." "Come in, my child," the muffled reply came. Princess Adan turned the brass handle and entered softly. There, she found the king sitting at his desk, brow furrowed, surrounded by scattered parchments. He seemed to be puzzling over something too. "You also cannot sleep, father?" Adan asked. "No, I am distressed by what happened to you today," he said heavily, shaking his head. "Please, daughter, come sit beside me here." The king shifted his chair toward Adan, taking both her delicate hands in his weathered ones once she had settled next to him. His eyes searched her face sadly. Adan took a breath. "Father, I hoped speaking with you, I might finally understand. Why have I been cursed with this hideous odor since childhood? Surely you know the full tale. I beg you, please help me comprehend why I am tormented so." Squeezing his daughter's hands, the king spoke slowly. "Dearest Adan, there is a painful story from your childhood that I must share. Though it breaks my heart to tell it, it is time you learned the whole truth of events long ago and how they shape the sorrows of today. You see, when you were just a young, carefree girl of 7, your mother, the queen, decided to take you into the village one bright summer morning. She felt it important for you to see more of the kingdom you would one day rule. As the two of you were strolling along, you came across an impoverished beggar woman pleading desperately for money and food. The poor woman had her own tiny daughter by her side, a girl who seemed around the same age as you, my child. Their clothes were just dirty and torn, hanging loosely on their thin, hungry bodies. The little beggar girl's ribs showed through her torn clothes. They looked tired and desperate, my dear. But you were just an innocent girl who didn't understand what it was like to be poor. When the beggar woman saw you and your mother dressed in fine clothes and jewelry, hope appeared in her tired eyes. She quickly came over and knelt before you, pleading, "My noble queen and lovely young princess, my daughter and I are very poor and hungry. We haven't eaten in almost 5 days, and we're starving. Please, could you give us some coins or scraps of bread so we don't die?" At that moment, the poor little beggar girl with her was so amazed by the sight of you, a beautiful princess, that she ran forward and hugged you. "My dear, I know you didn't mean any harm. You were just scared by the sudden embrace from a strange, dirty child. But in your panic, you pushed the little girl away from you because her ragged clothes touched your fine silk dress. Your royal hands pushed the small girl to the ground. As she looked up at you with confused, teary eyes, you said cruel things I can't forget. 'Disgusting wretch,' you shouted. 'How dare your dirty hands touch me? You stink. Your smell is awful.' In your disgust, you even hit the little beggar girl hard on her face. Then you spat at the poor woman, still kneeling before your mother, asking for help. 'Disgusting beggars,' you yelled. 'Stay away. Leave us alone.' Trying to escape a situation you couldn't understand, you grabbed your mother's arm and pulled her away, back to the palace gates without looking back. I can't forget the shame and regret I feel for not being there that day to guide you both on how royalty should have compassion for the suffering of our people in our hearts. There, on her knees in the dirt, the broken beggar woman cried out in pain, a sound that still echoes in my troubled dreams. Tears filled her eyes as the distressed little girl held onto her mother tightly. Even as you walked away, my daughter. The beggar woman looked up to the sky and cried out, "Beautiful Princess Adan, because of your unnecessary unkindness to my innocent, hungry child today, you will be cursed. From now on, for the rest of your life, you will have the worst body odor imaginable. It will be so awful, so horrible, that no one will want to be near you. This kingdom, which has spoiled you as its darling princess, will turn against you. People will laugh and make fun of you, whether you're lovely or not. You will feel embarrassed and alone until your last breath." Then, the beggar woman seemed to transform. Though she still looked tired, she stood tall, her face showing a strange power despite her ragged clothes. She said, "I am Izumba, the respected goddess of your ancestors. I came as a poor person to see if you, a royal, were kind. But you failed to show kindness. So now, spoiled princess, the heavens decide that my curse will be with you forever." With those words, lightning flashed and thunder boomed. The beggar woman and her daughter vanished in the wind, as if they were made of dust. At the same time, you, my dear, fell to the ground, unconscious from the goddess's curse. I cried in fear as the guards carried you back to the palace. We called upon all the kingdom's priests, healers, magicians, and doctors to try to save you, chanting old spells day and night, hoping to bring back a glimmer of hope that we hadn't lost you forever. Thankfully, after 3 days of continuous care and attention, you finally opened your eyes, my child. But our happiness at your waking up quickly turned into shock and sadness, mixed with the worst smell any of us had ever experienced. A terrible, choking odor came from your body, spreading through every part of your room. We found out that the beggar woman was actually a goddess in disguise. Her curse affected you, my daughter. You were left with the worst body odor imaginable for your whole life. Despite all the remedies the kingdom tried, potions, salves, prayers, and ceremonies, nothing could make it better. We hoped to calm the angry spirit of Izumba, but nothing worked. But everything we tried failed. You, my child, suffered in lonely isolation because of one moment of selfishness that went too far. You not only endured the misery of your condition, but we also saw how the people's feelings towards their beloved princess turned from love to disgust, then neglect, mockery, and even cruelty from those who used to adore you. It was a painful transformation caused by a single, thoughtless act. It's been constant suffering since that fate turned against us long ago. Not because of any initial fault of yours, but because you lacked the gentle guidance you needed. And now, here we are, both grieving souls. Much time has passed, but our regret feels as fresh as the day the beggar goddess cursed us. I should have spent more time teaching you that compassion must be learned early in life. Now this painful lesson comes too late, and at too high a cost for both of us. This truth troubles me when I can't sleep. I hold on to the hope that in the years to come, you might find a chance to learn and grow from your suffering, maybe even help others. If fate allows, even the toughest situations might change with time. We must keep going, my daughter, despite the bad luck we've faced. If we give up hope, we lose everything before we've really lived. After her father, the king, told the painful story of how Princess Adan's body odor was caused by a curse from the beggar goddess Queen Izumba, Adan sat quietly, looking at her shaking hands. She couldn't believe what she had just heard. She realized that when she was a spoiled young girl, she had been unkind because she didn't understand poverty. Now, she was cursed to always have this odor problem, no matter how hard she tried to fix it. Adan felt like something inside her broke when she understood that her life of pain and loneliness was because of one mistake she made as a child. She cried heavily, feeling incredibly alone and hopeless. She barely managed to say thank you for telling me, before running out of her father's chambers, crying so much she couldn't see, with her father calling after her. Adan hurried through the dark stone corridors, trying not to make any noise that might wake up the people in the palace. She ran out and didn't stop until she reached her small hut at the edge of the grounds. There, she collapsed onto her sleeping mat and gave in to her overwhelming grief and despair. She cried hard, blaming herself and feeling sorry for herself until she fell asleep from exhaustion as the sun began to rise. The next morning, Adan woke up feeling confused for a moment, forgetting the torment of the previous day before reality hit her again. She desperately wanted to talk to her beloved Arins, the only person who stood by her despite her frequent smell problems. Arins fully accepted Adan unlike everyone else. But how could Adan face him now, knowing she could never marry him without exposing him to a life of mockery and humiliation from the mean villagers alongside her. Feeling hopeless and wanting to spare the man who loved her, Adan decided to distance herself from Arinze. She knew it would break her already fragile heart to lose his constant support and love. She cried bitter tears as she prepared for this, then headed to the secluded grove in the woods, where she secretly met the charming drummer boy every afternoon. When Adan arrived and saw Arinze eagerly waiting with a delighted smile, his happiness nearly made her abandon her decision entirely. Holding back tears and speaking with a shaky voice, Adan quickly explained, her voice trembling with emotion. "Arinze, I just found out why I have this terrible problem. I was cursed when I was young for being cruel, and now I'll always have this odor so no one can love me." She took a deep breath through her tears and continued, "You're too good and deserving to be with someone like me, who's been disgraced because of my past actions." Looking at his shocked face through her tears, Adan said, "I release you from any obligation to someone cursed like me. Please, go love your life happily, and find another girl to love and marry instead." Arinze listened silently to Adan's painful words, his face showing deep concern. When she finished, his smile faded, replaced by sympathy. He reached out and gently held Adan's trembling hand. "My dear princess, you were just a child back then. You couldn't have known what," Arinze said softly. Adan cried even harder. "But can't you see? You're not a bad person. Can't you see? I am disliked for a reason. You deserve someone better than being tied to someone like me," Arinze said quickly. He moved forward and embraced the shaking, sad princess, holding her close as she broke into tears. "Hush, my dear," he comforted. "You don't need to feel guilty for things that happened long ago. We all have moments we wish we could change." Arinze gently lifted Adan's chin, meeting her teary eyes. "What matters is the kindness and compassion I see in you now. That's what tells me you've learned from your suffering." He wiped Adan's tears away. "The past may hurt, but we can find happiness in the present. I don't care what ignorant villagers say. I love you, flaws and all. I'll proudly stand by your side if you'll let me." Adan let out a shaky breath, feeling relieved and grateful. Arinze still loved her, even knowing about her past mistakes. "But doesn't it bother you that I am cursed and everyone avoids me?" she whispered with uncertainty. "You may promise loyalty, but one day you might change your mind when faced with the challenges of sharing my rejected life." Arinze gently placed a finger over her lips. "I choose willingly, with no illusions. Any difficulties will be something we face together." Then he pulled Adan close again. She felt tired but suddenly hopeful, embraced in unconditional love. No more words were needed in their special, quiet sanctuary in the grove. Princess Adan simply snuggled into Arinze's strong embrace. Finally at peace with her revealed past, she let go of her worries, allowing them to drift away on the soft forest breeze that surrounded the devoted pair as they held on to joy and each other. In the happy weeks after Princess Adan told Arinze about her cursed condition, the two lovers became even closer and happier together. They found comfort, trust, and understanding in each other's company as their bond grew stronger. One breezy afternoon, as Arinze walked home after another wonderful meeting with Adan, he realized it was time to talk to his father about wanting to marry the princess. Arinze thought his father might object because of Adan's curse, which caused her to have a bad smell. But Arinze hoped to appeal to his father's kind side and get his blessing. He loved Adan deeply, despite her struggles, and was sure of his feelings for her. When Arinze got home, he found his father, Chief Uzo, the respected healer and elder of the village, busy making potions at the wooden table. Arinze took a deep breath. "Father, can we talk? It's about Princess Adan." Chief Uzo looked up in surprise but motioned for Arinze to continue as he went back to crushing herbs with his stone pestle. Arinze spoke earnestly. "Father, even though Princess Adani has faced lifelong challenges because of a curse she got when she was young, in these past few months of secret meetings, I've come to love and care for her deeply." The drummer boy clasped his hands together, pleading, "I respectfully ask for your blessing to marry her." Chief Uzo stayed silent for a thoughtful moment before responding gently, "My son, isn't this princess meant for a life of luxury in the palace? Can you provide for someone who grew up in such privilege?" Arinze replied passionately, "Father, though Adana was born royale, a curse and scandal forced her out of the court long ago because of ignorance and heartlessness. What I see in my princess is her beautiful soul. We find joy and comfort in each other that no wealth could replace. I promise to stand by her side through everything." With this heartfelt declaration, a slow smile appeared on Chief Uzo's weathered face. He stood up and placed an approving hand on his son's shoulder. "Then she has my blessing as well, my loyal son. I believe true love can conquer all." Later, as Arinze explained Princess Adan's curse to his father, Chief Uzo's eyes lit up with inspiration. As the village's skilled spiritual healer, he wondered if the gods and ancestors might guide him to lift Adan's curse. Even after years of failed attempts, Chief Uzo grabbed Arinze's shoulder eagerly. "My son, bring Princess Adan to me at the next village market in 2 days, behind my herb stall. I'll perform a cleansing ritual that I believe could finally break this curse. Just bring her, and let the spirits of goodwill do their ancient magic." Arinze felt a wave of relief and hope at his father's words. He thanked his wise father warmly for his blessing. As he hurried back to Adan to share the joyful news that Chief Uzo agreed to their marriage and might be able to lift her curse, he prayed fervently that his father's skills would succeed where others had failed, finally freeing his beloved from her suffering. The next sunny morning, Arinze eagerly went to meet Princess Adan at their usual spot in the shaded glen. His spirits were high with hope after his father's promise to perform a powerful cleansing ritual to lift Adan's curse when the time was right. Arinze hummed happily, imagining the joy on Princess Adan's face when he shared the promising news. However, as he entered their leafy hideaway, all his pleasant thoughts vanished, replaced by awe at the sight of the beautiful princess waiting for him. Adan had already arrived and stood up gracefully from the soft grass to greet Arinze with a radiant smile and a tender kiss that made his heart flutter. After they settled comfortably together and caught up on their time apart, Arinze took both of Adan's hands and looked into her expectant eyes. "My princess, I have wonderful news," he exclaimed, unable to contain his excitement. Arinze told Adan about asking his father, Chief Uzo, for permission to marry her. "My father not only agreed to our marriage despite your struggles, but he also believes that his special healing skills might finally free you from the curse," Arinze exclaimed. He explained Chief Uzo's plan for Arinze to bring Adana to him during the next village market day. Princess Adan listened carefully, her eyes widening with cautious hope. She felt a mix of timid joy and disbelief, a glimmer of hope breaking through her resignation to a life of affliction. "Do you really believe your father can break this curse when so many powerful spells have failed?" Adan whispered, tears of fragile hope shimmering on her eyelashes. Arinze gently kissed each of her flushed cheeks and looked at her with determination. "If anyone has the ability and favor with the ancient gods to change your fate, it's my father," He comes from a long line of people who serve spiritual forces beyond our understanding. Adan let out a soft sigh, a small glimmer of hope taking root in her heart. Hand in hand, they stood up and went to tell the princess's father, King Chukwemeka, about this ray of hope. The king listened solemnly to Arinze's hopeful story. However, he shook his head sadly, pity and regret filling his eyes. I worry this might only prolong my daughter's heartbreak. We've tried every rumored solution across 5 kingdoms over the years, all in vain. But if this healer can spark even a glimmer of hope in Adan's eyes, I won't object, King Chukwemeka said, giving them his blessing. Adanere and Arinze barely slept that night, filled with delicate anticipation.